Hey guys, it's Andy, and today I'm going to be showing you my base routine and going over how I do my makeup here. I just wanted to give a little update for 2023, and so if that is something you're interested, just stay tuned. As always, everything that I'm wearing will be listed in the description box, as well as my socials where you can find me doing my makeup. So if you like makeup unboxings with a little bit of horror sprinkled on in, please consider subscribing, as I would love to have you here. And as always, let's just go ahead and get on into it. So we are going to get into my 2023 base routine here. I feel like I do it a little bit differently than I used to. So one thing that will never change is start with primer. For me, the primer that I'm using really just depends on what I have open, what I'm panning, or if I have a specific need for that day. But today I'm using, this is the Hard Candy Longwear Jelly Primer. This is what's in my Beauty A to Z project pan. It's not a bad primer. I don't love it, but I don't mind it. I don't think I would repurchase this primer, but it doesn't do a bad job per se. It just doesn't do too much. Personally, it's just the same as like if I had went in with my normal skincare. Like it doesn't add too much, but it's not too bad. And you want to give your primer a good 3 to 5 minutes to sink in. That's like my rule of thumb that they say, because you really want to let your skin absorb that primer. So for foundation, I'm currently using, because I'm panning a few things, but today I'm going to use my NYX Bear With Me Serum Concealer as my foundation, because this right now is my perfect shade match. This is in the shade Vanilla, and I'm almost done with it. And for foundation, I use one of two things. Today I'm going to use my sponge, because my brush is dirty, but for sponges, I prefer face and body sponges. I just like how big these ones get. I feel like it's more area to cover. This is from Wet n Wild. You can really get any sponge at any price point. I really like this shape with the flat edge, personally. Or I like the flat foundation brush. This one's from Farrah. I got this in an Ipsy ages and ages and ages ago. It's currently dirty. If I'm going to use a brush for foundation, which isn't very often, honestly, I prefer a sponge. But I do really like how this brush applies foundation. So, I'm just going to squirt probably 5 pumps, because it is a smaller pump and it's, concealer, on the back of my hand here. And I'm just going to take the back side of this and just get a good... Is it awful that my brain went to a dollop of Daisy of foundation? And I'm just going to start working that in. We're going to start in the center. And you're just going to pounce. I'm not too worried about my under eye, because we are going to use a different concealer for the under eye area. But this is a really nice way of using up your concealers, especially if they are your skin tone for your project pans, is using them as foundation. Because I did not realize that this concealer only had a 6-month shelf life. So that's why I'm trying to use it up. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish getting this foundation all pounced in and blended in, and we will move on to concealer. You can see that that gave me overall evenness. It covered up most of my redness. But I do want a little bit of brightening, so the concealer I'm going to use, this is my Maybelline Superstay in the shade 10. This is my brightening concealer. And so I just put that on the tip of my nose. I'm going to put that on the center of my forehead. We're going to put it on the inner corners of the eye. And then I always do a little bit on the outer corner of the eye as well. And that is where I keep my brightening concealer, personally. And I'm just going to do the same side of the sponge. And just... And you don't want to blend too much further from where you put the concealer. Like, you really just want to keep it where you placed it. Because the concealer's doing its job. Like, we've already have a layer of foundation for coverage. This is more for brightening. And if you're having an issue with the inner corners, I like to use a brush for that. This is a BH Cosmetics number 5 brush. This is the shape. I find that this works super well. And again, I'm just patting. And I go all the way down to my nose crease. And about halfway down my eye. And like, that just blended out so effortlessly. And we're just gonna do the same thing on this side. I just think a sponge is quicker, but I really like the precision that the brush gives for this inner corner of my eye here. So now, I am going to go in with cream products, but I do want to set at least where I put that concealer. So I'm going to take a puff, and I'm going to use my Aesthetica translucent powder. Make sure you rub your powder into your powder puff. And I am just going to powder just the spots where we put concealer for right now. I will set my entire face because I do have oily skin, but I don't want to set before my cream products. I just find it's easier to do it after. Plus, then I'll have to set less of my face, so... Really want to set that nose crease, because that is where my foundation rubs away and under my nose. And that's all I'm going to do for powder for right this minute, because like I said, we're going to go in with cream products. And now for creams, I use basically a brush for all of it except the highlight. For bronzer and contour, depending on the day, depends on what I'm using. Today is contour, so I'm going to use the Fenty Beauty Matchstick in the shade Amber. And I just draw this directly on the skin. And then I'm just going to take, this is a BH Cosmetics number 1 brush. It's an angled brush. And just in circular motions, I'm just blending it up. Out and up. So I'm going under my cheekbone because this is a contour color. If I was doing bronzer, I would do it on the high point of my cheek. And I'm doing the hollow of my forehead, so like this pocket. And I really wouldn't have to do it on this side because my hair covers it, but like evenness. So I'm going to do this pocket. If I was doing bronzer, I would pull it down further. But I'm not going to bronze today, really. And then I just, whatever is left, I'm bringing it up into the temple. Just a little bit. It won't bring too much there, but it's just to give that little extra shadow. Now, I don't do any contour on my nose, because that's too precise for me. And I also don't do my jaw. I just don't think that it needs it. For blush, I'm going to use the Milani Sunkissed Glow Cream Cheek Palette. And I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use this shade. And I just use my finger and I start with the apple of my cheek. With the same brush, I'm just going to pounce. Pounce in a circle. So I put a little bit on the apple. And then I take it up to my temple. So kind of in that like boomerang shape. We have the apple up to the temple. And always start with less. Less is more, especially because like we're going to be putting powder over top. So you can always intensify the color with powder. But I also don't want my creams to be non-existent. And you don't have to do cream and powder. You could just do one or the other. I just really like the look of both. I like the look that gives. So that's, get that off. And then for highlight, this is the e.l.f. Jelly Highlighter in the shade Cloud. And I'm just going to take this on my finger here and just on my temple. Just a dab will do ya. And I just blend this out with my finger. Again, in that circular motion, and I'm keeping this up on my temple for liquid highlight or cream highlights. I like to keep them up on my temple. Powder highlight, I'm going to bring it in that C shape, but because I'm oily skinned, I don't want to bring my cream or liquid highlights any lower. So now I'm going to powder where we didn't put creams. So I'm just going to take a powder brush. And it's really just the T-zone and then underneath my jaw. Which can clean up any lines. Because I like to work my powder. So I'm going to go underneath and then pull the powder down. So it cleans up any mistakes you might have made with your contour or bronzer. And now the reason I'm not setting any of that creams that we did is because we're going to be setting them with our powder products. Which again, if you didn't want to, you could set it with powder. If you didn't want to set it with a cream, bronzer, blush, and highlight. But by using a powder, bronzer, blush, and highlight, you don't have to set it with a translucent powder. And then you get a more intense color. But like that looks nice the way that it is. It's subtle, it's subdued. I think that it looks pretty. If I were going to stop here, I would use my setting spray, which is currently from Milani. It's just in a different bottle because mine broke. But I would stop here. I would use some setting spray, call it a day. But that's not what we're going to do because that's not what I do. I have a problem of always doing a full beat whenever I do my makeup. So for bronzer, powder bronzer, I'm going to use, this is from Viseart. All three of these are in my Beauty A to Z project pan. So this is the shade Bronze Noix, I believe how you say it. It's Noix. This shade is beautiful. And I love this shape of brush for my bronzer. This is a glam brush. It's a T126. And I'm just going to take it a little bit lower than where we contoured in circles. That's all I do. And I try to connect them more in the center and bring it down a little further on my temple. Nothing too crazy precise. But with my powder bronzer is where I do my nose. So I take a brush like this, which this is a concealer perfecting brush, which I mean, could totally use for that, but I use this for my nose contour. I go underneath the button of my nose, and I basically carve out the circle of my button. And then just up the sides towards the tip of my brow. And again, nothing too crazy, but it gave us just that little bit of definition in the nose. For blush, I'm going to use the NYX Sweet Cheeks Matte Blush in the shade Rose and Play. I like to take a dense domed brush. This is the BH Cosmetics No. 3 brush. And just in that same boomerang shape. And I like to layer. Usually I'll use even a darker shade where I'll put a lighter shade on the apple and concentrate a darker shade on this back side to more blend into my bronzer. That's really pretty to blend your blushes together, but today I'm just going to use this pink because it's really going to go with the eye look that I'm going to do. So we have that. For highlight, I have my Ofra Glazed Donut Highlighter. Normally I use my finger, but I'm going to try and use a brush just to see if it's going to pick up well, because I have never used a brush for highlight, so we're gonna see. Ooh. Oh, that's pretty. I see why people do this. Because normally I just use a finger, but this is really pretty with a brush. This is an SL Miss Glam brush. This is the Round Pro P40. And like, you can see it. So I just take it, and like, that's the shape I would still make with my finger. And then I always do the tip of my button nose. Always. So now I'm just going to spray my face with my setting spray. And then I would go into my eye look, and all I had left to do would be my eyes, and which I'm going to use my Milani Ungilded Most Loved Mattes, which looks like this. I'm basically going to use this trio, and I might dip into this shade, and then I'm going to use, I might use some singles that are in my project pan. And then I always use an eyelid primer. Right now I'm using the NYX Ultimate Primer in the shade Light. And then for lips, I will do off camera too, so this video isn't getting too long. I'm going to use the LA Colors Lip Liner in Pinky and my Jeffree Star and Morphe Gloss in the shade Living for it. So I'm going to go do my eye look, go do my lips off camera, and I will come back and show you guys the finished look just so you can see it. But this is my base all done. And then when I'm done with my eyes, I always just do one last setting spray just to seal it all in. But I will be right back. Alright, so here's the final look, and I think it turned out pretty nice. So that was my entire base routine. Again, I will leave my friend's channel, Dub's Beauty Diary, linked right here in the description box. I would you know, love it if you would go check her channel out. I'm sure she would welcome you over there. But I hope that this helped anybody out there. It was fun for me to film. I always love doing my routine here with you guys. But if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you have any tips or tricks that you'd either want me to try or anything, leave them in the comments, as I would love to do that for you guys here. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.